Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me for this acrylic painting tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint a tree. It's going to be black and white. I have a little road in front of it, and I'll show you start to finish how to do it. It's going to be definitely on the beginner, easy side, so I think this will be a great first time painting. Got my husband Mark with me.
Hey there, everybody.
He's manning chat for our live show, so if you have questions while I'm painting, you can ask those, and I'll try to answer them. Let's get started. Alrighty, so our reference image is a square. So I just grabbed a 10 by 10 inch canvas for this one. You can use really any size you want it, and if you wanted to, you could crop it this way or this way. If you just have a rectangular canvas, don't have the square, that's fine too. This one is a Pro Dixie 12 ounce Dixie canvas from Fredrix. The Pro line is their better quality. It's got a little bit of a more of a textured surface than the linen canvases that I sometimes use, but I really like this one, and it's got a nice deep side, so you can set it up. You don't have to frame it. All right, let's go over our brushes really quick. I've got a number 12 bright and a number 8 bright for some of the background filling in, and then most of the details on the road and the tree are going to be with the Willow's blender, 3/8 inch and 1/4 inch, and then I have a fan brush for some of the grasses and a couple of round brushes. Well, this is actually a number 2 script liner for some of the taller grasses up in here, and then this one's a number 1 round for just the tree trunk. So really any of these brushes that are similar will work. These ones here, the Willow's blenders, are just kind of a round Filbert shaped stiff bristle brush. So anything in that vein will work. And really we're just using black and white for this today. No major colors. You could mix your own gray if you wanted to with ultramarine blue and burnt umber. But I just decided to go with black and white.
Thanks for the sponsor.
Yes. And thank you to our sponsors, Princeton and Fredrix, for providing our brushes and canvases today. I'm trying to point to the to the paints here, and Mark's telling me something else. Sorry. Okay. This is carbon black and titanium white. So there we go.
That is a long list.
Well, I'm waiting for you to do them. Like pointing, I'm literally doing like this with my brush. Mark's just looking at me, going.
It's like, what are you doing?
At my palette. He's just smiling at me. I'm like, dude.
You're off script. I usually say thanks to our sponsors before I switch over. But.
Okay, well, all right. I'm going to have to go with it. Just like,
okay.
You have to read my mind. All right, I am getting my number 10, my 12 bright here. I'm going to spray my canvas. I just got plain old water in a spray bottle here. And I put out heavy body, and these two are heavy body, and then these ones in front are fluid acrylics. The fluid acrylics will just be a little bit easier. They've already got more of a flow to them. They're thinner, more like a craft acrylic consistency, and they will be better for our grasses. So I just went ahead and put those out for that. But when we do our background here, we're going to use the heavy body acrylics. All right, so I'm going to start out with the white. I'm going to add just a teeny tiny bit of this black. And like I said, if you want to kind of tint this, you could use a color. I think it'd be really cool if you used, you could use blue, you could use whatever. You could do the whole thing in black and white and then do your tree a color. There's all kinds of different ways that you could personalize this one. So this is the kind of ones that I really like doing with beginners because they can kind of make it their own and kind of there's really, it's pretty easy. I would definitely say this is a really good one for a first-time painter. I don't think that it's going to be particularly difficult. Probably the hardest part is going to be here up in the sky, but if you kind of spray your canvas, get it wet, and just do like I'm doing here, I think you'll be okay. So added just a little bit more of the gray, and now I've got wet white paint from about here to here. And what I'm going to do is blend my next color into it, but I don't want to blend right on the area between like the fresh paint and the dry. I want to come out just a little bit from that and put my fresh paint on the outside of where I want that next color to go, and then where that blend is once I've got most of the color off my paint, then I can blend it into my white and it'll blend a little bit better. And then if I have, and I'm going different directions, you see I kind of went this way and then I came back this way, going different directions to get that to blend in. You can see as I come toward the middle, I'm going to lose most of the color on my brush. And if I don't, I can pick up a little bit more white and kind of go right on that border where I want that blend to happen and just blend, blend, blend. And I'm very lightly touching the canvas here. I'm not really pressing down too hard. And I'm kind of doing these side swept brush strokes. So there are kind of like some cloud looking things over here. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and go with that when I'm painting this in and let some of this look like it might be clouds. And just by going kind of side to side like this, I can get that effect. I want that white part to come all the way almost up to the middle of this section right here. Oh, I forgot to draw it. Sorry. I just jumped right into the painting part. Let's draw the horizon line here. It just dips a little bit. So it's just about below halfway here, and it curves up a little bit. So there's like a little rounded hill, and then it curves down, and there's a little bit more of a rounded hill where that tree hits, and then it curves on down here. So this part's going to be a little bit higher than this part right there. And then this part down here I'll draw later. I want to get this guy going while it's still wet. I don't want to, I don't have time to draw that right now.
You got time for that?
Yeah, no. And the thing with this is, if you, I think that one of the things that beginners struggle with is using too much paint. And they, if their paint starts to get sticky, they add more paint instead of adding water. So right here where it's starting to dry, I need more water in my brush, and that'll keep that paint moist that's on that area where I want it to blend. I don't want to go down in here with water because this is starting to dry and it's thicker paint. It'll lift it off. It'll, do just like you're washing out your brush. If you wash, water over the top of wet paint, it'll just wash it off like it would your brush. So just keep that in mind when you're adding water. You want to add water to the paint down here on your palette, not straight onto the canvas, unless it's dry underneath, and then that's okay. But hope that makes sense. All right, so adding really dark up in the corners, and we'll probably need a second coat on this. So if it doesn't look great on the first coat, don't worry about it. That's pretty normal. And here, again, doing that side swept thing with this so that any of this paint, I started way up high so that I have most of my paint off my brush now. There's some up in here, but this very tip of the brush is pretty dry. And I'm going to get a little bit of water, tap that off, pick up, actually I'm going to just wipe my brush clean, pick up a little bit more of that medium gray, that's this color that's in between, right? And blend that in. And the thing that you want to watch for is, like I said, if your paint's starting to get sticky, you can pick up a little bit of water, but if it's really getting sticky and it doesn't feel like it's pushing around anymore at all, you just need to stop and let it dry, especially if you start to see like little areas where the paint's lifting off, or like the paint's not sticking to the canvas. Then it's drying underneath and you just need to let it set. So acrylics are kind of particular. That's why I started down here, and you can notice that I have not touched this since I first put it on, because this is starting to dry. If I went in here and tried to paint over it right now while it's still slightly wet and starting to dry, it would stick straight to my brush and it'll pull right off the canvas. So just be aware of that. Keep your brush moist while you're working and work quickly. And once you get this first layer on, just let it dry. Even if it's not perfect, you can always go back over it. The nice thing about acrylics is they really cover over very easily. They're really easy to cover up and do layers and multiple layers. So you don't have to get this perfect in the first try. And I'm just going here and kind of flicking it. You can see the tail end of my brush is kind of wagging that brush. And what that does is creates that soft feathery look. Let me see if I can get well, I can show you down here. So if I was to pull my paint, I'd have kind of a hard edge right there. But if I flick it, you can see how much softer that edge is. It's a little subtle difference, but there's like a much straighter edge here than there is when I flick it. So we're looking for this kind of softer thing going on the sides here coming in. Right, and that's pretty much all we're going to do with the sky. I might go ahead and do one more layer on there, but like maybe in here. But I know that this is starting to dry, so I don't want to touch it right now. I'm just going to let that dry, and I'm going to skip on down to this part. And it's pretty dark. We're going to go fairly dark to start with down here. And I'm going to, you see how I kind of tap my brush like this? It's going to separate out those bristles so that they're not all sticking together. They kind of separate out a little bit when you tap the end of them. And then I can use them right here, and it'll look like grass right there. It's going to give me a little broken edge. And I'm just going to pull down. And most of this is going to be a lot lighter than this, but I'm going with it dark to start with, and then I can go back over it with the lighter color, and that way I've got a little bit of that dark underneath. So while that's still wet, I'm just going to grab a little bit of the lighter color and just go back over that area that I just did and leave just a little bit of that dark showing in places. So do maybe some little sections that are a little bit darker and a little bit lighter, just like little kind of rows almost. When you look at things from far away like this, they kind of do this, they look like they're in lines stacked almost. As you get closer to them, they'll get taller and sort of in front. But these things back here are going to be very small and very kind of close together and stacked. So just going to, I'm whispering now because I'm being really careful. You gotta sneak up on it. Don't let it know you're doing it. No, I'm joking. Here I come. Shh.
It can sense fear. Don't let it know that you're afraid.
Sneak up on it. All right. There we go. So I'm going down about, let's see. There's the halfway mark, right? And I probably came up a little bit higher than I needed to on that side, but that's all right. And then, so I can maybe bring this up just a little bit, just to balance it out a little bit. So about halfway there. So right on the third, just about, is where I'm going to start my road. So kind of right down, if I split this canvas in thirds this way, this is sort of where my road was going to be. So what you're going to do is, and if you need a traceable for this, I will have it available on my Patreon page. They're only $1 a month for all the traceables that I make from way back to 2017 to now. So just $1 for any of the ones that you want to download, as many as you want. Not $1 each.
And that's of October 2019.
Right. Yeah, it's going to go up at the end of this year.
If it's
to
October, 2093, it might be $100 a month.
True. Who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows?
Inflation, all that.
Exactly. I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe. I don't know how many traceables we'll have by then. So what I'm going to do is kind of do a diagonal here. So I'm going to start right in here, and almost to the corner here, I'm going to have a diagonal line coming up this way. And it's going to stop right about on the third, right this way. So, whoops, right there. See that? So right about there, I'm going to curve it in pretty tight. And then I'm going to skip over, and right about in here, I'm going to continue that road on. So this diagonal will continue on this way. and it disappears behind this grass that's right here. So there's some grass right here on that corner that's going to cover up that road. And then right up next to it, a little bit more of a shallow angle, but pretty similar still. This part of the road is going to come out. And about right in the middle of that line, so right when you kind of do this diagonal here, this one's going to stop right about the third. This one's going to start right about the halfway mark. So here's our halfway mark. Does that make sense? Third, this one, right here, halfway, this one. And you're just kind of making this diagonal this way, and it's going to point up to about the halfway mark on this canvas. So if you did a straight line from about an inch in from this corner all the way to this and this line should kind of bisect it. Say that? All right, and then I'm just trying to help you so to be able to draw this yourself if you want to. So this line is going to be almost parallel with this, but not quite, because it's curving in a little bit. It's a little bit more flat. The angle is a little bit more flat. So it's going to come out this way, and when it hits this mark right here, it's going to go out past it just a little bit and then curve and do this like backward S thing right there, like that. And then this one is going to curve right up in here. So this curve and this curve are at an angle to each other a little bit. So this one actually could come down just a little bit more right there. They're not across from each other. See how much higher that one is than this one. So don't put them right across from each other, because then it'll make it look like your road's kind of floating weird. And then bring this one out and do a long curve, and then it comes back in this way. Right at the end, it kind of comes almost straight at us, right there. Then there's another line that goes right down the middle. So it splits this one, and then it's a little bit closer on this side than this side. And just mimics that shape. And there's another kind of set of lines that's right in here. And then, of course, there's all kinds of the margins of the road. But this is our main kind of line on it. All right, this is starting to dry. That's good. Get some more of this. I'm going to keep my paints wet by spraying them. And you notice that when I'm mixing, I'm just pulling a little bit of the paint from the side here and then mixing it over on a clean spot on my palette. I'm using a glass palette, but you could use any kind of foam plate or plastic, even wood, I guess, as long as it was sealed. You just don't, or palette paper. Just don't want to use anything that's porous that's going to suck the moisture out of your paint. So no paper plates, unless they're waxed. I've seen people do that, and I'm like, oh, they got to be having trouble, because it cannot be. It's you're not gonna have any moisture in your paints once it gets onto the canvas. So if you need to, you can add a little bit of water. I just make sure that you saw that my brush had been sitting there with paint in it. So first thing I did is dip it in the water, because it was going to start to dry out. That you just need to keep that brush moist back in here. If it's not wet back here, what it'll do is it'll just start sucking all the moisture off of the paint on your canvas too, and so your dry paint is just going to stick. You're going to need more of it to get it to come off the brush. It's just going to want to stay on your brush. It's not going to want to go onto the canvas. So to keep it flowing from the brush to the canvas, you've got to have water back in here. It does need to be dripping off. It just needs to be moist. So so many times I get comments about how I'm using way less paint than other people are, and what's the secret? There's no secret. It's just water. That's it. That's the magic formula, water. You just got to keep your brush moist.
Don't believe her.
It is.
She's a paint whisperer.
I do. Well, I mean, and also one thing I do want to the disclaimer also is, don't expect yourself to get this done in the same amount of time that it's going to take me tonight. If I was doing this in a class, I would give it probably twice as much time as what I'm doing now. Because when I'm painting by myself, or painting for myself, I know where I'm going with it. I know the next thing that I'm going to do, so I don't have to stop to think about it. I don't have to, stop to change out whatever. I've already got it in my head what's happening, and if you're watching, you don't know the next thing that's going to happen, so you can't anticipate. You can't, you can't paint exactly what I'm painting at the same exact speed that I'm painting it, because that would be impossible. So just, you know what I mean? You'd have to have, I don't know, some kind of magic prediction sort of powers, predictive powers.
Except for those psychics out there.
True, they may have easier time of it.
And they knew you were going to say that. And then laugh. And laugh some more.
That's why you said it. So going in pretty dark, it's pretty much the same darkness as up there. And I'm just, as I get up to this area that we've already done, just making sure I get rid of all of that little white bits that kind of gets trapped in your canvas. Your paint goes on and sometimes it doesn't go down all the way into the white cracks. I'm going to get a little bit more white here and go over this area. And again, just kind of up and down so that I've got some lines that are random little spaces for our grasses to grow. Keep them small back in here. The closer we get to the bottom, the bigger our grasses are going to get. But way back in here, all the way back above our road here is all going to be pretty small grasses. And especially right up in here, you're not even really going to see the lines too much. It's all going to be pretty same. I can even just tap straight up and down in this area. See that? See that? I'm whispering again. What? There's a lot of mixed reviews about the side cam. I get comments from time to time saying that they hate it, and then I get comments from people saying that they love it. So it's kind of a.
Don't listen to those people.
I think you either love side cam or you hate it. I don't think there's a lot of middle ground for it somehow. I don't really particularly.
I know you keep putting stuff in the way, so I can't use
really
it.
Particularly think it's
like,
useful, but some people really like it. So
I need a light here.
What?
Said I can tell you're putting stuff in the way, so I can't use it. Oh, I need a light here.
I need a light.
After 5 years of doing this, I just need a light now.
Well, it's a new studio. I do need a light. All right, getting my black hair. And I'm trying to decide I want to keep this little bit of light area right on that road going around that corner. So it's got to be dark up back in here. And you can see I'm not putting it on perfectly clean around these edges. I'm kind of tapping as I paint this on, and that'll kind of make it look a little bit more natural. You don't want a really solid line right there. It's just not going to look right. This is kind of a dirt road, so it's going to be really kind of imperfect and bumpy, and lots of rocks and things happen along the sides there, so it's not going to be straight gravel like a asphalt road. If it was asphalt, I might be a little bit more particular, but even then it's got that dirt kind of side. It's, turns to dirt eventually. So okay, so just kind of doing a little bit lighter right there, just so I kind of know where that's going in there, but for the most part pretty happy with that. I want a few little areas in there where there's a little bit of darkness. Keep it fairly random, and I'll pick up some more of this white. Tap that in. On that edge of the road. This is kind of the medium value. So it's not as dark. There's going to be some areas that are darker and some areas that are lighter. So it's kind of right in between. It's going to end up quite a bit lighter along the middle areas. But we'll start out with a little bit darker, and that'll give us something to work against. That's why we did our sides dark. Do this nice and dark. You want it dark enough so that when we put that white grass in front of it, it's going to show up. If we don't, your grass is not going to have any kind of depth to it. So we need this dark background for us to put those grasses against. I'm kind of tapping off that color right there because it's almost, I'm going to actually get a little bit more of that black, true black, and tap some of that right there. Just right along the very edge of it. There we go. And then this middle area is a little bit darker. So I'm just... And this brush is pretty big. I really had meant to switch my smaller brush by now, but I forgot. So if you're finding this brush too big, you can switch to a smaller brush for this part. Make it easier on yourself. Get a little bit more of the straight black and do it right in there. Okay, so then when you get to this point, if you've got any areas that are dry, you'll be able to tell once it's all the way dry, but if you've got any areas that you see these little white dots through, what you can do is just get a little bit of water and some paint here, thin it out, and put it over the top, and what it'll do is kind of soak down in, so you get kind of watery paint. And it'll soak down into those little holes and fill up any of the gaps in your paint. Now you don't have to paint it over, because if you paint it over with another thick coat of paint, it's still not going to get down into those little cracks. But using a thinner paint will do it. Just soaks right down into them. Okay, looks pretty good. So this is dry. I'm going to get a little bit more of my white. But actually, I'm pretty happy with it. I think the only part that I really want to mess with is right in here, because this, I don't really like the blend right there. But I'm going to get a little bit more white and a little bit more black. We'll work on that just one more time. Usually the second coat will help kind of blend out any unevenness too. It's kind of... You've already got your other colors underneath, so you don't need as much paint. And you can kind of just focus on the areas that need a little help. Again, make sure that you're using some water in your brush. Okay, so I'm going to start up here and start really dark. Again, kind of flicking it from the corners in, add a little bit of white. And if you've got some glazing medium or a flow medium of some sort or something like that, you could use that here. It'll help your paints, give you a little bit extra time to dry, you know, to blend while they're drying. It's not necessary. If you're a beginner, you're probably not going to have it, so don't want to feel like you have to run out and buy a bunch of different kinds of paint or products. If you just want to kind of try something fun, this would be a good one to try, and it's definitely got some good blending. Getting more of that black. Okay. Again, kind of doing this side to side thing. So so that if I'm getting streaks, it's going to look like kind of clouds or something coming in. Yeah, I'm good. Getting more of that white. I'm going to turn this because it's going to be a little bit easier to work with it if it's sort of on its side. Get a little bit more water. There we go. A lot more water here. Okay. Oh, I went over my road there, or my thingamabob. Really just kind of doing basically what I did before. And if you go over under here, you're fine.
Which brush are you using?
This is my lumber, 12 flat, 12 bright. I really should have started with the white instead of the black, just like I did the first time. So I would probably do the opposite of what I did here. Just do the same thing that you did the first time, because this black is too prevalent in my brush. It's not one to come out. So it's really influencing the colors too much, closer to this white here. A little bit easier to control the darker colors than it is the lighter colors. So probably better to start with those, because this is wanting to go really dark in the center here, or I want to keep it bright. So what I'm going to do is clean my brush out. Try to catch it while it's still wet here. Grab just white. And it's got a little bit of that gray right here where I've already mixed into it. So I'm just going to go right along that horizon line and go over the top of that I've been putting in. If you go over your grasses, don't worry about it. You know how easy that was to put in. So don't, this is more important than worrying about your grasses. To get this on fast while it's wet. Streak it back and forth. In that darker gray, a little bit darker, a little bit more water. There we go. Were you saying I was off camera? A little bit? Oh, you weren't? Okay. So I want my tree all in here, so I don't want that dark behind it too much. I want the lighter color, so I don't want to go encroach too much on that area where I want that lighter color to be. Kind of a medium dark back in here, but pretty light along that horizon line. So I want to keep it fairly light along the horizon line here. And I'm just swishing that white back in where I want it to be brightest. Did that because it had gray in my brush. Pick up that white. almost pure white really down here, right on behind my tree, like it's glowing. And then everything else from the sides can start to get a little bit of gray. So let's get some of that sort of medium gray here. And I'm just going to use it and kind of tap and swish. Tap and swish. Some kind of like cloud-like shapes there. You can leave this part out if you don't like it or feel like it's too difficult. It's totally optional. Get some of that darker gray. A little bit of water. Make sure there's a little bit of white in there. It's not the darkest gray, but yeah, there we go. Let's pull that down in there. This will make it look like clouds. And I'm just kind of blending over them a little bit with this brush that's sort of just dry. Now this is harder than what we did the first time around. So if you want to keep it simple, just do the first layer and call it good. You know, get it as close as you can and just don't mess with it. And if you want to go just one step further, do this. It's always, you know, it's just paint, so you can always paint over it if you feel like it didn't work for you. And the nice thing also, you know, with acrylics is, well, a lot of times there's kind of an ugly stage with acrylics where you might just need one more layer of paint before it looks right. So just keep that in mind with this. You may, you know, get this done and do this layer and then just still go like, I really don't like it. And then just add one more layer. Do it again. See if it works for you the second time, third time. And the main thing that you want to not do is just to put your paint on too thick, too quickly. So I'm keeping my paint fairly thin. That gives me room for more layers. If I put it on super thick, it's just not going to flow very well when I put my upper layers on. So I might have to end up gessoing it if I have any issues with it. So just keep that in mind. Try to keep your layers fairly thin doing this. And make sure that you're keeping your paints moist as you work. It can be as complicated as you want it to be. So if you want clouds, put clouds. If you don't want clouds, leave them out. Putting one more layer of the white there where I want it to be. I think that looks good. I'm gonna get a little bit more of that gray. That's sort of my borderline color. Mix a little bit of that in. And I want to get a little bit darker here and do one more layer of that kind of flicking. Ooh, hit my mic. Sorry. Hope that wasn't super noisy. Good. Okay. I really should have just left it the first time around. I liked it better. Before I put a second layer on. Okay, there we go. I think that's good.
Yeah, your shirt matches your painting again.
I know.
Still has room.
I did think about it this time. It's a little bit more deliberate than the purple one. But again, only thing I had clean, so I'm running out of my paint clothes. I have some of my other stuff, but I didn't leave. We're going through renovation, so we have like, we're living out of boxes and suitcases. So, have been since July. It's been an adventure, to say the least. All right, grabbing some more of that lighter color, and I'm just going back in right here and adding it back into my hillside here. I lost all my contrast there. Sort of went over everything. Get a little bit more of the darker. To the lighter color here. Again, tapping just kind of straight up and down almost. If you're not getting enough texture with this, you can use a brush. You can use a scruffy brush. Use a brush like a hog bristle or something like that that's got a little texture to it. Or our Willow's blenders that we're going to be using later will work too. I like this one though because it's got a longer edge, so you're going to cover more ground. You're going to get a little bit better look. I'm going to set it up and just kind of flick it upwards as I do these back layers here. That'll make it look like grass. Just set it down and kind of flick it just a little bit. This area right here should be almost the same color as that background. It shouldn't be too much darker. And then down in here, it's a little bit darker along that horizon line right back in here. Talk to Spencer there. My son's playing video games in the other room, making noises. We're missing parent-teacher conferences tonight. We're bad parents. Except for he has pretty much straight A's, so I think we're okay. Alrighty, there we go. So we got about halfway through there, and then now I'm going to start with my fan brush and doing some more of the details. So let's actually let's use this one. This is the 1/4 inch Willow's blender. I'm going to work on the road a little bit, and I'm just going to get some white and my black, and this is going to be fairly light gray. So probably along the lines of this darkness right over here. some of the lighter gray in our sky here. And I'm going to tap along this upper back area here. And kind of do sort of side to side taps. So, and then right here it's going to disappear. And this is the only one you're going to see, this side. You're not going to see this side going all the way up. Because it's disappearing behind this one. This one in front. Tapping side to side, and then as we get over here, I'm gonna take more of the color out here, and I'm just gonna kind of gently scrub it side to side here. If it's coming off really dark, then too much paint. If you're not seeing that darker color underneath, then you probably haven't wiped up enough paint. It loose, leaving a little bit of darker area right there. Okay. Okay, get a little bit more. A little bit in the middle, just in a couple places, not that there needs to be. It's actually brought it out too far. I'm gonna do a little bit more of the lighter and then grab a little bit of that darker that's in the middle here and do the same thing with it, kind of in the opposite. And I still have the lighter on there, so it's going to kind of influence it too a little bit. But I want that darker to kind of pick up a little bit and kind of right where that curve is, there's going to be kind of an area where it sort of merges a little bit right there visually, and then they kind of separate again. And a little bit of that darker. So I want it to curve in right here, and I want some of this to be dark too along in here. Just kind of a small area right here, and then there's a small area along here that's that lighter color, and I'm going to darken it up as it goes back in the back here. It kind of disappears. And I'm going along that edge and just darkening up with a little bit of this color, just sort of lightly shadowing over the top. You can still see that light color through it, but we're shadowing with the darker color right along that outline between the black and the light color. Just making sure it's nice and dark right there, and just softening up that edge a little bit. Get the black and just kind of do a few areas that are a little bit darker. Get my lighter color here, and now kind of be a little bit more more strategic about where I want to place this. Now that we've got some other colors going on here, I can kind of put in some highlights that sort of define that boundary between the light and dark a little bit more. Get a little bit more of the white. And just in a few places, give it a nice bright little kick. Very lightly touching here though, because I want it to stay pretty. Oh, boy, that is full of paint. I want it to stay pretty faint, so there's a little bit right here. Right there. A little bit right in here. And again, keeping these sort of horizontal-ish, so it'll make it look like they're sort of on those planes like we talked about. And not by planes in the sky, but planes of our field of vision.
I was wondering, that's where the rains fell. No.
I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about.
On the plains. The rains.
In Spain, stays mainly in the plains.
Mm-hmm. You want to sing with me?
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plains.
Oh wow, the viewer count just went down drastically.
I think she's got it.
Bunch of people just left screen.
Man, I have watched that movie so many times. Those were our VCR days when, before we had cable or satellite or anything, way out in the middle of nowhere, I watched My Fair Lady. I had it on DVD. I had 2 little boys, babies, and a VCR and a TV, and that was it. So we watched a lot of Disney and a lot of musicals. And My Fair Lady was like my favorite. So I probably could name that whole movie from start to finish. It's been a while since I've watched it, so maybe not now, but I mean, I pretty much had it down. Every song, every dialogue.
Okay, so...
And I'm still not sick of it.
So I may be onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
How many super chat donations do we need to not sing again?
Oh my gosh. Hey, I did not know I was a bad singer until my friend Michelle came over. She's a music teacher and she loves karaoke, and so she brought her karaoke machine with her the one and only time she did that. She found out really quick that neither one of us could sing.
Yeah, I'm sure you were bad mouthing me. Like, he can't sing, but I can.
I thought I could sing. I've been in choir like since I was little. I thought I could. I would have been one of those people on American Idol that was shocked that she didn't know how to sing. Like, I would have been like, they don't know what they're talking about. And then everybody would be like, yeah, Angie, you can't sing. Sorry. We just didn't want to tell you. I got A's in choir, though. It's all right. They give everybody A's that shows up to tell you.
I do know I sound a lot like Lady Gaga in the car. Yeah.
With no one else around.
Well, yeah, and the radio turned way up high.
Mm-hmm.
I sound like almost spot on.
Alright, so I just went through here, added more, and I have no comment to that. Added more of my black along these margins here. And just making sure that I've got kind of, uneven lines around here. Mess up your line between the road and the grasses there with lots of uneven stuff right there. A few little spots in my road that have dark areas. Okay, good. Let's start putting in our grasses. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put in my tree trunk and let that dry. So I'm going to get white and some of this gray and get a color just about the same as this. And really, you can put your tree wherever you want to in here. I think I'm going to put mine right in here. So I want it close to this color of the grass right here. And I'm just going to put a tall branch up here. Another one that kind of comes off this way. And then at the top of it, I'm going to get a little bit of the darker and go, and I'm using that fluid acrylic, so it's easy to do my little tree branches here. That's all I need to do. The rest of it's going to be pretty much all tree. You can throw in, if you really want to, you can throw in a few branches back in here, but most all of this is just going to be tree, so doesn't really matter if we have our branches back there. They're not going to be super visible through there, but we can go ahead and put a few in if you want, just to make it a little bit more realistic. Like I said, most of that will be covered up. So let's go ahead and grab our black. And I'm going to go ahead and, while I've got this going, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. I'm going to smush this brush down so that it's flared out right there. And you can use any brush that you've got that will give you this texture. So it could be a Filbert that's old and ready. It could be this kind of brush. It could be whatever you've got that works. So don't feel like it has to be this. I really like these Willow blenders myself just because they make this a lot easier. They can do all kinds of different things, and I do really like the way they work. This is a specialty brush that only Princeton makes. So, and I'd never used it until I started with being the sponsor. They started as my sponsor. They sent me some brushes to try, and this was one of them that I was like, interesting. And it's pretty much become one that I use with almost every painting. It's just very versatile, great for adding textures. You can see I'm leaving little bits of white just peeking through here and there, little spots of white. And concentrating on the outer edges of my tree, having a really good border, interesting shape happening. It's rounded, but it's not a perfect circle. It comes in and out, in and out. So it's not like a perfectly rounded section. That'll make it look a little bit more natural if you give it some little ins and outs. And these lower branches are going to come down fairly low, so come down right about to that split. And then they'll come up pretty high up here. Keep on working on this. Okay, and then some areas are going to be nice and solid, almost. So I'm going to make those a little bit more solid. And then I'm going to pick up my white, tap, tap, tap. And right around the edges there, I'm going to tap in some of the lighter color. Like that light's behind it, so it's kind of dark in the front, but it's got a little bit of the light color peeking through here and there. So there we go. That's pretty much all I'm going to do with that. Let's grab my fan brush. We'll work on some grasses and we'll be done. The grasses are going to go pretty quick. Going to get the white, mostly white, a little bit of the black mixed in. There we go. So I got dark to light. You see how I did? I started with a dark and kind of got different levels of darkness for my grasses, and I've loaded it up here. I'm going to get a little bit of the darker here. Now right along that edge. That went on a little bit too wet. I had too much paint on my fan brush there, so I might practice on a piece of paper just to see how your fan brush is doing. This one is kind of laying down a lot of paint, so I might go a little bit lighter with the paint. Because you don't want it to go on solid like that, like it did there. There you go. Very light touches. A little bit of both colors on here. I'm going to use this dark and just like pretend that this road is continuing on here. So there's these grasses that are going to be dark right back in here.
We have a question.
Can't see it, but yep.
They wanted to know that if they want the tree colored, will they paint it like this first and then glaze over as a color, or use a colored paint instead?
I would use a color just because that black is going to be hard to cover. So yeah, I would probably add black to whatever color you're going to use. So just a touch black for your dark area, and then add your white to the color, you know, for your lighter areas. Now, like say you're going to use a red, if you, I would do red plus black first, then red, and then for your highlight, I would add a little touch of yellow or orange to your red so that you don't have a pink highlight. That'll just keep it to look more like a natural red highlight. So that's a way to do really any color that, like green, you could add yellow to your highlight. Orange, you could add yellow to your highlight also. Blue, you could add purple to your shadow and green to your highlight. So kind of use the color that's like right next to it on the color wheel and use that a little bit in with your white, and that'll give you a kind of a more natural looking highlight. Okay, so just going in different directions. These ones are kind of the medium high grasses. And if you need to, you can grab some of that darker, mix that in, and kind of put some of you. It's best to kind of start from the back and work your way forward, because as you overlap those grasses, you don't. If you start at the top here and you overlap underneath, then you've got all of this protected. But if you overlap on top of it, you're going to cover all of your little wispy parts. So like if I come up here, I'm going to cover up these wispies that are down here. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to add another layer of those down below because this was too dark, too light under there. But just know if you do that, you're going to have to, you know, kind of do another layer one more time. So doing the light, do the dark. And do the light again. There we go. Keeping them in different directions so it looks natural. smaller back in here. And then right in here, get some of that darker. Put those over the road. Right there. Wipe off most of that. Get my lighter color. And if I didn't have this fluid acrylic, I would just be adding water to my fan brush or to my paints to get this. So just keep that in mind. If you're using heavy body acrylic, you're going to add quite a bit of water to get the fan brush to release the paint. Okay. So, but just below that dark area that I did, so I did that dark area of dark grasses that kind of followed that roadway. So right in front of that, I'm going to do some lighter ones. And if I get too many that are kind of looking like obvious, I'm going to switch it up, use the corner of my brush or whatever I need to do to. There we go. This is great work for the fan brush. Now, other thing that you could do, if you didn't want to do so many grasses, you could continue to do those little kind of stipply things like we were doing back in here with your bigger brush. You could still do that down in here. You could just do it looser style, so it would look kind of a little bit more loose, not maybe as realistic, but it would still look good. So.
Okay, a little while ago you said something about if you don't layer right, you would have to do it again or something like that.
Well, yeah, if you do if you cover over, if you layered from the bottom up, then you would be covering up all your little wispies at the top here. So if you did that, you just have to do come back and do those areas again. Right. Yeah, start from the top. I'm going to use a little bit of the dark. Use my lighter. These ones are going to be the longest ones, so this is where you could get out your angle, your liner brush if you wanted to. Okay, pretty good. You can get my liner here and a little bit of the mostly white, and I can go in here and just do some taller grasses here, keeping it thin and going in different directions, maybe bending some over the road a little bit. These ones should be small. These ones should not go any higher than like right down in here, this bottom inch or so. Don't do these tall ones way back here. They can be kind of medium high, but not those super tall ones. And I can go in here and just kind of add a few little highlights to certain ones that I want to keep them very small back here. And you can see even around the road, I've kind of made them different I'm going to come back in here and do one last thing that's going to really help this whole thing have a lot of depth. So it's my little like magic fix for everything. I'll show you that in a second. Get some areas that are too bright or you don't like what they look like. This is going to help fix it. Okay. This just helps kind of have some random stuff in here, breaks up that pattern too. So having some of these kind of little bitties in here and kind of random areas, that fan brush can kind of have a repetitive pattern. So doing some of these little highlights on some of these will help break that up. And it's a little bit easier to control. Now I'm using the long bristles, holding it kind of far back here, and I'm not like trying to get them really carefully. I'm just flicking my brush. I'm setting it down and flicking it up. Setting it down very lightly. You can use this hand if you want to help support this hand underneath. That'll keep it from pressing down too hard. Using a thinner brush too. The longer bristles will make doing the grasses a little bit easier, and also using a brush that's got very thin. That liner brush has got very thin bristles. Now this one can make a fairly thick line if I press down really hard. So that's why I'm making sure that I'm only just barely touching it down. And make sure with the liner brush, number one thing, make sure you have lots of water in your paint. It will not work if you went in with a heavy body acrylic. It wouldn't even come off your brush. It will stick right to your brush. It will not come off. It'll make it really difficult. You'll have a really hard time. And what you'll end up doing is pressing down really hard to try to get that paint to come off your brush, and then you'll end up with a really thick line. And that's what happens with a lot of people when they're trying to work with a liner brush. So make sure that you have very watered down paint with the liner brush. It'll make your life 100% easier. All right, so I'm happy with that. Ooh, 7:15, not bad. Making pretty good time. I'm just looking if there's anything else I need to do. Really, at this point, I would use a hairdryer on this because I want to make sure that all of this is completely dry before I do our last little step on here, but I think it's pretty good. Now, I'm going to use a little bit of glazing liquid. If you don't have this, don't worry. You can just use water. Just don't use too much water. When you're using, if you're using like a craft acrylic, you're fine. Because craft acrylics have a lot of this binder that I'm using. This is basically binder is what I'm using here, this gloss glazing liquid. So if you think about a craft acrylic would be mostly glazing liquid plus a little bit of pigment. The paint that I'm using, heavy body acrylics and the golden acrylics, are very heavily pigmented. This fluid acrylic can be watered down more than the heavy body acrylics can without it having any issues. But if you add too much water to a heavy body acrylic, like 30%, maybe more, 30 to 40% water to paint, then you can have trouble with it lifting off your canvas. So that's just something to think about. But chances are you'll be using a craft acrylic or something that it won't have as many issues. So you can just use plain water if you don't have a glazing medium. So I'm going to glaze, added glazing liquid or water or whatever you're going to be using here, right along the bottom of those grasses. What's that's going to do? disappear that end. I'm going to use heavier acrylics right here. Pretty, almost thick paint right here. And then the glazing liquid a little higher. See, you want to be able to see those ends just a little bit. I'm just going to use water here. Smush that around. See how that does? So this side's been done. This side hasn't been done. You see how much more this more looks natural here. That's what we're doing. We're trying to hide those little white ends of our paint. So start in the black area and kind of push it up over those ends. Make a big difference. I think glazing is one of the unknown secrets. Acrylic world, it makes a huge difference in your paintings. If you start to do it, it'll really bring them up from kind of an okay painting to a wow, that looks real painting, you know. So darken up in here and darken up along that line of those grasses there. Just make sure you don't darken up too much of your tips that you want to be kept light. So that's the main thing. But you can go back in here. I'm gonna, darken up some of these areas kind of in between the grass layers to add kind of layers of darkness in my grasses so that it gives them kind of some interesting movement. It's not the same colors all the way through. It'll make it look like there's grasses on top of grasses. So just adding little sections of the darker in here. All along. And you can kind of see where you've done the darker, or, the lighter layers, so you can just kind of target those. And if you do too much, you can always go back in and do one more layer of your lighter color. So I can go back in with my liner brush. Rolling it to a point can help you get a sharper point on it too. So if you are having trouble getting a good tip on it, you can roll it to a point, and then so I can go back over and add just a little bit more of my lighter color over the top of those newly formed dark areas. Adds just that much more depth to my painting. Layers and layers. And I think we're about done. There we go. Not too bad. I think I want to do one more little bit right here. I just noticed right here. Bring my road out just slightly more right there. I like how it turned out. It's cool. I'm gonna get my, where is it? There it is. No, I need to do it in white. Gonna sign my name, and we'll call it a night. Not too bad for Tuesday night. Try to keep them down to hour to an hour and a half, so this is an hour and 20 minutes. Pretty good.
So if your money was on no splatters, you're a winner. Tonight it was It was about 70-30. People were saying no splatters, so
Most people.
good game. I mean, even Mr.
Thanks
Splatter.
for playing splatters and no splatters.
Yeah, even Mr. Splatters had no hope.
David.
Yeah, so
Sorry, Dave. You could splatter. Not gonna lie, I thought about it, but I decided against it because then I was afraid it would look like stars. So otherwise, I would have done it. The sky's a little too dark for it, I think. All right. Oop, missed it. There we go. All right, guys. Thanks for watching tonight. Glad you joined us. Hope you come back, subscribe, and join us on Saturday. We're going to have another painting. I'm seeing something here. I saw like a section in here that's kind of lighter. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that if I can get it in there. So we'll be painting a pumpkin on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be kind of a companion to the one that we did last year. We did a pumpkin that had like a floral vase in it. Well, it was like made out of, it was a vase. It wasn't a, yeah, so it didn't make sense. It had flowers in it. A pumpkin hollowed out with flowers in it. So that's what we're painting on Saturday. And it should be a lot of fun. So hope you'll come by and chat with us and join our crew regulars. Thanks for those who come and watch with us every week. We so appreciate you guys. You're the best. And we'll, if you, one more thing about Patreon, if you want the traceable for this, it's available on patreon.com/AngelaFineArt. If you're already a patron and you are looking for traceables and you want to find an easy way of finding them, they're stored on Patreon, but the Patreon search engine is a little bit difficult to figure out. So you can go to my website, which is thankfulart.com. Let me see there. And it has a page with the traceables. So you can search through those and then it'll take you straight to the Patreon page where they're saved. So,
and while you're there, sign up for the newsletter.
Yes, when you go to thankfulart.com, sign up for our newsletter. Send it out once a week. Tells you all the videos that we've got coming up and any giveaways and different special stuff that we're doing. Also usually do a book and music recommendation. So if you are a book and movie lover like I am, you want to check out what I'm reading, you can... I would think probably 0.001% of the population of our video watchers are interested in that, but you know, there's some. So I'm interested in it. So anyhow, yeah. So you can, I don't know why that was funny, but probably not that funny. Actually, I want to curve this in. It looks like it's straight right here. So one more thing.
Oh,
really quick.
man, all those who've already left, they lose.
Oh, they lost. Okay, sorry.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You just...
You never know with me.
Say ha-ha to everybody else who left.
Okay, bringing that in, it curves it back around right here. There we go. Okay, done. Have a good evening. We'll see you on Saturday. Bye, guys. Thanks.